and it's going to be my 14th podcast. And I'll try to look more directly in the camera and improve this podcast, this sermon. So I want to get started on Psalms. It's basically going to be 150 chapters inside Psalms, mainly David, King David. And as you read through each of the 150 different testimonials of greatness of God, you'll see that he's talking about, or each of the parables are talking about God will defend and he'll guide us and flee to God for safety and justice, call to God for mercy and hope, care for the poor, must have hope in God, and with the understanding that riches will not last, and the prophecies of the coming, Messiah is in there, and that's going to be a long, long time ago with Abraham on a prophet, king of Salem. It was before Jerusalem, about the coming Messiah, and then worship and trust the Lord. That's pretty well what you're going to see as you go through the Psalms, and which is kind of beautiful, and it's always about praising God, and which I enjoyed reading. So please look at that, and then it's poetry in motion. I just want to kind of get into a historical narrative that's kind of more value, I think, right now, at least for me, on a personal level, to talk about. And that's really moving everything into, the 300, 400 era. So basically almost 350 years past Jesus. And I want to talk about Emperor Julian. And this is going to be the emperors of Rome, and how God goes in and he looks at these emperors or kings. We've seen that before at Nebuchadnezzar, and capturing and destroying Jerusalem, dragging the Jews to Babylon captivity. We've seen King Cyrus, a Persian king, grants the Jews to leave and go back to Jerusalem, rebuild the wall, the temple of Solomon, and how God really works for his own initiative, and he knows what he's doing. Then the reason that I kind of find this is interesting is because when you come into the emperors like Constantine, you have to understand that Constantine, and you're basically 337 AD, he's the one that came up with the Council of Nicaea, and that's when he asked and brought in, the rabbis and the priests all around the Middle East, and that's where we get our 66 books of the Bible, because the conference was about which of all these Bibles will go in the Old Testament and which of these Bibles will go in the New Testaments. Now, the reason that God picked, 300 AD is that is when the commerce of the Roman Empire and their roads is at optimum. And that means the word of Christianity could spread all around the world in ships and roads, because the Romans paved roads everywhere. That's how they moved their armies such lightning fast. And then Constantine pretty well set up as the emperor of the East in Constantinople, which is Istanbul, but then he had a battle in Rome. There was a bridge in Rome where he was going in, he was going to fight for supremacy, because there's two different emperors in the Roman Empire during that time. And he prayed to God and said, if I win this battle, I'll bring in Christianity. And there were some crosses in the sky. And so that would have converted into his mind, Constantine, that Christianity is the dominant religion and God is real. So Constantine bring the Bible, Christianity, to the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire at that time pretty well owned the world. So we see that God picks his time, and he knows, because a day is 1,000 years, or 1,000 years is a day to us or to God. And so we end up having Constantine as an emperor of Rome bring in the religion of Christianity. Then he pretty well converted his mother, Empress Helena, and then she even took it a lot further. Then Helena eventually became it. Then she went down to Jerusalem, and then she did her research and found the 3 crosses of Christ on that Calvary Hill. And she located them and then bring them back to her son, Constantine, in Istanbul, Constantinople. And how she found the 3 crosses of Christ, his cross, the 2 gentlemen to the right and the left of him, is that she had a dream, and she starts a fire, the smoke will come up, and it'll come back down. There's where the crosses were going to be. So she found the crosses. The crosses were under this temple of Venus, Greek in origin, and then she dug them up and destroyed the temple, if you will, and that being a Christian church over it. And so she was very instrumental. And how she figured out one of them was Jesus, she bring in a sick lady from Jerusalem and set her down on one of the cross, nothing. The other cross, nothing. But on the 3rd cross, she had a miraculous healing. And so that was really, really important. Then as we go through Emperor Constantine, and then Constantine number 2, another emperor, and this is 337 to 361, AD after death. He followed through on Constantine number 1 about bringing Christianity to the Roman world. And so basically we have over 50 years where they're bringing Christianity to the Roman Empire. And then an Empress Helena lived to be 80 years of age, and she stayed a Christian all throughout the thing and deeply motivated by Jesus. And Empress Helena, God chooses small people to do great things. She was basically a chambermaid or a concubine of one of the emperors of Rome. Then he married her. She became an empress. And that she had such a marked influence on Christianity, bringing to the Roman world. Then we get to my narrative on Emperor Julian, and then he's going to be basically 361 to 363 AD. And when he came in to be an emperor of Rome, he didn't like the Christianity. Very educated man. The Greeks really, really taught him a lot, and the Greeks have something called Hellenism, and so his game was to go back to persecuting the Christians and downplaying Jesus, and then bring in paganism and the Greek, Socrates and Plato type thinking, and then the gods of Greece, Zeus and Hermes. And so that became his idea to destroy Christianity. And he published throughout the years, he was an avid writer, and people went through all of his narratives. And then he called the Christians different names and belittled them and called them all Galileans. And he tried to get the Jewish people and the Torah, the book of the Jews, and then try to get the Jews to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple to downplay Christianity. And historical evidence shows that in that 362 AD era, for almost 2 years, there's a lot of earthquakes in that area. So the Jews could not rebuild the temple when they went back there. And even when Emperor Julian sent some workers there to start it, a ball of flames erupted from the sacred spot on the temple wall or temple foundation, and it destroyed the carpenters. And then they pretty well gave up and ran the other way. And so we see that God knew how bad Emperor Julian was and trying to stop the progress of Christianity coming to the world. And then Julian decided to take the road east and go into the battle with the Persians. And then there he dies. And Emperor Julian knew that his life was going to be short because they had different sources that go to predict the future. And so the temple never got rebuilt. And then the third emperor comes in, Jovian, Jovian, 363, 364 AD. Then he nullifies all of Emperor Julian's persecution of Christianity. Then he reaffirmed Christianity as the religion of Rome. So we learn that God controls the rich, the powerful, and here we have a man whose duty was trying to stop the Christians, but that is not in God's plan. And so God goes ahead and knows what's going to happen to these people. Then on Emperor Julian, on his deathbed, who he knew, because he knew Jesus by the reading, and he on his deathbed he cursed Jesus, kind of like Job, his wife, tried to get him to curse God. And so Christianity, as we know it today, one of the most dominant religions on earth, came because of the Romans. And then God knew the time would be perfect to bring Christianity to the world. And that's how God works with the powers and the people to accomplish his goal. And what we see on Jesus, looking back at it all, he is prophesied in the Old Testament that he's going to come. And he did come, and the Jews are still waiting for the Messiah to come. And so that is the historical narrative that I have on the Romans and how we got Christianity. And so I want to thank you very much for letting me explain that on a historical level, so we can all know how the Bible came to the Roman Empire and how it became, and how Rome, St. Peter's Square, and Paul and Peter, they executed there and built the church. And then we get into the Pope as we know it, Roman Catholic Church. I really don't have anything to say about that. But I want to thank you very much for letting me explain that. And next week I'll be giving a podcast on Proverbs. And that's going to be, Solomon. And then I'll come up with another historical narrative too. Please look at Romans7.org. It's about, our mission statement to build affordable housing. And please look at my podcast. And please email me encouragement, to keep on trucking. So I want to thank you very much, and God bless, and I'll talk to you next week.